Hey, hi everybody, this is Mona. We're going to go ahead and get started. It is 11:02. Today we are covering day 2 of the IMA for Beginners series, setting up new items in the new item grid. I do apologize about yesterday. I had a stomach bug. I was not able to do the webinar, but I did send out the video for day 1 from a previous webinar series. I hope you all were able to view that, and we can discuss any questions you have about day 1 at the end of today's session. Or if you haven't had the chance to view it, try to view that today or tomorrow so we can be sure to cover any questions you have before the end of the series this week. So today, like I said, we're covering day 2 of 4, and I am recording today's webinar. I will send out the video link, and I already sent out the PowerPoint ahead of time. Usually I send it out at the end, but this time I decided to send it out at the beginning in case you'd like to print it out and take notes on it. But I will send out the video link later today for today's webinar. So if you could go ahead for me and test out the chat feature. Be sure when you use the chat feature that you send it to all participants, not just the presenter, because I actually won't be able to see it if you just send it to presenter because I have the presentation up. So be sure to send it to everyone. But if you can hear me and you can see the presentation, please type the following information. Your data sync provider, whether you use OneWorld, OpenText, third party, maybe you don't know which one you use, or none. And then what is your skill level with the new item grid? It could be none, novice, intermediate, or advanced. So for example, OneWorld intermediate, or don't know novice. So again, your data sync provider, and then your skill level with the new item grid. And I'll come back to these in just a few slides. Just some webinar etiquette I'd like to go over. If you could please put your phone on mute when you're not speaking, that would be great. If you're listening to the audio directly from your computer instead of calling in, be sure to mute your computer's microphone. Otherwise, we tend to get a lot of background noise picked up, whether it's your office mates or someone coming up and talking to you and you not realizing your microphone is on. So if you don't know how to access your computer's microphone, you can do that by going to Control Panel, Sound, and Recording tab. And I'd really like to leave everybody's microphones open for the presentation so you can audibly ask questions. But if there's too much background noise, I will have to mute everybody until the end of the presentation. So please be sure to mute your microphones when you're not speaking. Also, please be sure to audibly wait to ask questions until designated times. I'll have this blue bubble graphic with the question mark up periodically throughout the presentation. Please also be sure to keep questions on topic and minimal. If you have a question that had a detail to it, or maybe you need to provide more information, it'd be better if you emailed that to VenderUniversity@searshc.com and provided any screenshots that you could. That really helps in being able to understand specifically what issue you might be facing and how I can best answer that for you. You can also feel free to submit questions at any time using the chat feature. Again, be sure to submit the chat question to all participants, not just the presenter, or I actually won't see it since I'm presenting. So at the beginning, I asked if you could let me know your data sync provider and your level. So let's look at some of our responses. We have Amy uses OneWorld, no experience. Same with Cody, doesn't know which data sync provider they're using. We have a couple more OneWorlds and then novice. Okay, so it looks like a lot of you are using OneWorld, and a lot of you either have absolutely no experience or just a little bit of experience. So day 1 would have covered a lot of the IMA basics and terminology. So if you don't have any experience or you're pretty new, I strongly encourage you to watch the video link that I sent out. Today we are walking through the new item grid. So if you are doing, well, I'll touch on if you're doing manual item build in a couple of slides, but yeah, so I'm just going to go on, and if you come up with any questions during the presentation, feel free to submit them through the chat. Real quick about me, my name is Mona Meyer. I'm the Instructional Design and Training Manager for the Vendor and Item Support Team. I own a cat named Tofu and a blind dog named Chloe, and I have 3 adorable nephews there in the center. And I also love to travel. I love traveling to as many countries as I can. So that's just a little bit about me, since you're going to be hearing from me quite a bit this week. And as I mentioned yesterday, it was the IMA basis and terminology. Today, setting up new items. Tomorrow, we're going to be discussing IMA features. So some of these include quick search, the changes tab, some of your different task lists besides the new data catalog tasks. And then day 4, we're going to be covering maintenance in IMA. So in day 4, you'll learn how to complete common maintenance updates. So this is usually on items that are already operational in IMA that may need changes. So we'll be covering a lot of that information on Thursday, day 4. So if you do manual item build, right now we do require that a data sync provider to be used. There are a few exceptions to that. There are certain cartons that cannot be synced, such as mixed cartons, assorted cartons, and pallets, as well as sellable cartons. So if you build any of these specific types of cartons or pallets in the system, those cannot actually be data synced over. And to give a quick clarification, because I would have talked about pallets on day 1, you can ship pallets without actually building them in the system as pallets, because if you're Sears, you can't build them in the system as pallets. So this is only applicable if you actually build them in the system as pallets where you can't sync it over. So if you do any of those types of cartons or pallets, you have to create your items manually. So today's session may not be very relevant to you if you do not use data sync. We do plan to begin offering a recurring webinar for manual item build in March. I had wanted to get that out there earlier, but we just haven't had the resources. So if you need assistance prior to that, please reach out to imahelp@searshc.com, and they will help you with manual item build and walk you through that process. If you only have a few items maybe that you need to set up in our system, and that's it, if you're not going to be a recurring vendor, or maybe you're just a one-time-a-year vendor for us, you might want to consider another option that we have where we can build your items for you. It's the SHC Item Build Program, and it's $5 per G10. So for most typical items, that means $10 total per item, $5 for the retail UPC, and $5 for the shipping G10. If you would like more information on that, there is the link provided for you as well as an email address. Again, this is in the PowerPoint that I did send out to you, so you can come back and refer to that if you'd like more information. So today for objectives, we are going to be covering IMA access and resources, the new item grid, and then grid history. So first up, we have IMA access. Some of you had responded that you don't have any experience yet in IMA, so you may not actually have IMA access yet. So if you do not have IMA access, to receive that, you would log into the vendor portal and click My Profile in the menu bar, and then scroll down and click IMA, which is right here, and then select the box, right here, and then select the box next to IMA, which is over here, and then you would click Save. You can scroll down and verify your information. Most likely it's probably correct, but it's always good to verify. And then note that IMA access will be processed within 2 business days. It's not immediate. And if you are a brand new vendor and you have not been in IMA at all yet, you do have to sync items over before you will be given access to IMA. And then to access IMA, you access it from the vendor portal. You can click IMA under Applications Group, or you can click the IMA in the menu bar up at the top, and that will take you to our IMA portal. We do ask that you access the application through the portal rather than just bookmarking the application directly. We do sometimes have deploys and system updates that bring the system down, and whenever that happens, we will put a note on this page to let you know that that will be occurring so that you can plan your business accordingly. So your system requirements. Does anybody have any idea what the single issue that the help desk receives the most calls about is? So the single issue that the help desk receives the most calls about is actually your browser. IMA was created to work properly with Internet Explorer 8. And so you can only access it through Internet Explorer. If you access it through Chrome or Firefox, you will run into problems. It may let you in initially, but usually either the grid doesn't work properly or it won't bring up your task list. So if you're running into any problems that just aren't making sense on why you're getting those problems, double check which browser you are using. You do have to use Internet Explorer. Also, you have to set compatibility view, because I doubt any of you are still using Internet Explorer 8. So because of that, you do have to set the compatibility view, and we are going to go over how to do that. Also, you have to have a Flash player installed to use the grid editing feature, and there is a link provided there. Again, this is also on the IMA portal, as well as the PowerPoint that you need. So to check your current browser that you're using, you can go to Help and About Internet Explorer. It will pop up with this window, and there you can see which version you are using. If you're not using 8, you have to set compatibility mode by clicking Tools, Compatibility View Settings, and then type in mykmart.com and then Add, and then Close. And then you should have compatibility set. Do keep in mind, a lot of you have systems updates pushed out by your company to your computer. Sometimes those system updates can reset the compatibility view settings. So if you're suddenly having some issues that you weren't having before, where it's just kind of just acting a little funky, maybe it's flashing on and off the screen, or it's not loading your task list, but it's not giving you an error, anything like that, go back and double check that compatibility view settings are still set, because that can be reset when you get updates pushed out by your company. So any questions so far? Okay, then we're going to move on to IMA resources and help. When you get into the application, there is a section right here called Resources and Help that you can use to assist. Keep in mind that the application is used by both internal users here at Sears as well as our external users, our vendors. So some of this is relevant to you as a vendor, some of it is not. If you click Resources, you get this drop down here. And some of the items that might be relevant to you as a vendor is this information on data synchronization, vendor IMA documentation and training. There's some videos there for you. And then quick solutions. If you have a quick question like how to add a carton, a lot of that is listed under quick solutions. And there's also a link to the vendor IMA portal. And then there's a help desk link. If you click the help desk link, it's going to pop up with some more information, including a phone number as well as a link to a form to contact the help desk. Now if you click the help button up here, this actually opens up the IMA help file. And here you can see there's a content section here. That's what opens by default. You can also check the index or the search function. Now for vendors, most of you should be data catalog vendors, so I recommend from the content section, you can click Data Catalog Vendors, and then all the information under this section should be relevant to you. Also online, we have training. You can access this through Vendor University IMA Online Training. You can also access this through the IMA tab in the menu bar. Here you can see there's a link to view some IMA training videos. It gives a good overview. These are a bit out of date. They were created a few years ago. We're working on hopefully getting those updated this year, but they should still provide some good information for you. And then down below that, you have IMA guides and documentation. If you're a data catalog vendor, this is the data catalog vendor guide. And then here, you have One World Sync mapping and GXS mapping. So if you look at those two files, you can see the mapping for the fields that are available to sync over from those two providers. And below that, we have some quick steps documentation. A lot of this will be covered in our Day 4 Maintenance and IMA session. but you can access that here if you would like to download that documentation directly. We do also offer on-site training for IMA and Workbench. The next offering we're going to have will be April 26th. That is on-site here in Hoffman Estates, and the biggest bonus of that is being able to get into our training environment and get hands-on experience for the new item grid, maintenance IMA, and we have a mass change class as well. And then in the afternoon there's a 2.5-hour session on Workbench. So if you'd like more information on that, you can look it up on the portal with the Vendor University tab. So any questions so far? Okay, so then we're going to move on to the new item grid section. So using the chat feature, again, make sure you send it to all participants. What is your biggest struggle with the new item grid? And I will come back and look at these in a few slides. But again, if you could just let me know what your biggest struggle is with the new item grid. Obviously, if you haven't been into it yet, then you won't know. So what is the grid? The grid is a flash-based spreadsheet used to complete product data, and it's used by vendors who send items to IMA using data synchronization. One of the biggest perks of using the grid is that you can work up to 50 items at a single time. If you're setting things up manually, you actually have to work those through one by one, and it can be very time-consuming. You have to enter in all of the information every single time for every individual item. So with the grid, you can work up to 50 items at a time, and we do have a copy down feature that's really helpful so that you're not entering every piece of information in individually, but just copying that information down. So with data synchronization, after you sync items, they may not be immediately available in IMA. For One World Sync, it happens hourly between 2 a.m. and 11 p.m. And then for OpenText, that syncing happens 3 times per day at 12 a.m., 4 p.m., and 12 p.m. So sometimes vendors will sync items over, and when they don't see it available in their task list within 30 minutes, they might contact our help desk wanting to know why their items are not available. And a lot of times it's because it just hasn't synced up yet with their provider's syncing time. So if you use a third-party provider, you'll have to contact your third party to see exactly when they do their syncing with IMA. So we do have, there are a lot of fields that can be synced over using your data sync provider, but we also have some non-data catalog fields available. Some of these are required, some are not. But we do require some of those fields to be completed in the grid before they can be processed from your role. So I'm going to do a brief overview through the new item grid setup in the PowerPoint, and then I'm going to switch over to the QA environment, our training environment, so I can actually walk through that in more detail. So this first part is just going to be a quick high-level overview, and then we'll be switching over to do a demo. So to access the new item grid, you hover over Data Catalog and click New Items. Do be aware that items in the new item task list are automatically deleted after 60 days of inactivity. So if you've synced items over and you don't touch them for 60 days, then they're going to be removed from your task list. If that happens, all you have to do is go back in and resync those items, and they'll show back up in your new item data catalog task list. To keep them from being deleted, you just have to go in and touch your items, like put them on a grid. And you don't have to process them yet, but if you put them on a grid, then that 60 days of inactivity is going to be reset, and it's going to start over counting that 60 days. So once you click the new item data catalog task list button, it's going to take you to this page, and there are a lot of different fields that you can enter to search for your items. If you know a specific shipping marking number or retail marking number that you're wanting to work on, you can enter that directly here. So do keep in mind that if you're entering a retail marking number, that you enter it in the retail marking number field. if you enter that in the shipping marking number field, nothing's going to come back in your search results. And vice versa, if you're trying to enter a shipping marking number, make sure you enter it into the correct field. If you enter that into the retail marking number, you're not going to come back with anything in your search results. That happens quite a bit. I know we get a lot of emails from vendors that are doing that exact thing. So just be mindful of that. You can also search for your items using a description. If you synced over a group of items that all have the same description and that's the group that you want to work on, you could enter that there. Just be sure to realize that it is very specific to the character. So if you added an extra space or an extra punctuation, it will not come back unless it matches exactly. You can also search using your vendor stock number. You may have synced over, let's say, 4 different vendor stock number groups, and you just want to look at one. You could enter a specific one right in that field. If you have multiple paid-ons numbers, you can select that here, the ones that you want to look at. Or you could search by your load date. So if you know you synced over items 2 weeks ago, and then you synced over items yesterday, and you want to focus on the ones you synced over 2 weeks ago, you could enter your load date from and to just bring back those specific items. So you do not have to enter all this information. I don't encourage you to enter all the information because you probably won't come back with anything. But you do have to enter at least one filter criteria prior to selecting Get Task List. So once you enter your criteria, then you would click Get Task List. And it's going to come back with your search results. Most likely you will not have anywhere near this many items in your task list. You may just have a few, or you may have maybe up to 100. But it will bring back all items that match your search criteria. And if you do bring back too many items where it's difficult for you to find what you're looking for, you can add additional filter criteria at this point down at the bottom. You can put shipping marking number, retail marking number, description, change type if it's a new item, or it might be a change, or it might be a new vendor pack, which would be indicated by OPR new. Or you can select your vendor stock number or a specific load date. So that's how you would further filter your task list if you have too many items in your task list for you to work with, for you to manage. One of the things you should always do before moving on is click the plus sign next to your shipping marking number, and then it will explode that shipping marking number out so that you can see all of the pieces to your carton. So here with the shipping marking number, we can see there's a size small, medium, and large contained within this carton. Make sure all of your pieces of your carton are there. If you are missing one, if there should be an extra large here, do not go ahead and process this. Wait. Go back to your data sync provider and resync that extra large over. You do not want to move on until you have all of your pieces of your carton here. So if all of your pieces of your carton are there, you can go ahead and select it in the Select column and click Create Grid. And here you enter your required information for the new grid and click Apply. Then you would populate all the required fields. Those are going to be indicated by your red asterisk, and you would click Approve. Be sure to save your grid frequently. It will time out if you leave it. So if you've done a lot of work on your grid and you step away from your office for a few minutes and you come back, if it's been 30 minutes since it's been saved, it will time out and you'll lose all the work that you've done. So be sure to save your grid frequently. So when you're in a grid, there's a lot of information about the grid that displays at the top. So here in the area that's in red, we can see there's a grid type. This is a new item grid, which is what we're talking about today. Over the next couple of days, you'll learn that there's a couple other grid types that you could have as well, such as changes grid or return to items grid. But N indicates new item grid. And then here we can see your SHC division and category. This cannot be changed once your grid has been created. If you realize this is not correct after you've already created your grid, in order to fix that, you would have to delete your grid by clicking Delete Grid here. And then you'd have to go back to your task list. And whenever you go to create the grid, you'd have to make sure that you select the correct division and category on this screen right here. And the same thing with the flow type. If you set it up with the wrong flow type or the wrong order duns, you'd have to go through the same process to correct that. Everything that's on a grid has to have the same division, same category, the same DUNS number, and the same flow type. Here you can also see your flow type and DUNS number at the top of the screen. Now you can also lock your screen on the left side. So if you have a smaller screen that you're working with, you may find it beneficial to unlock your screen by clicking this lock. And what that does is it allows the entire screen from KSN all the way over to scroll left to right. If you're working on a regular sized screen like a large monitor or a larger laptop, you can leave this locked and it'll probably be fine for you. And what that does is all these fields to the left that are the black heading, those stay locked and in place, and only the fields to the right of those black-headed columns will be the ones that scroll left to right. So that's what the lock icon does, and I'll show that to you when we get into the demo. So the selected view status will display in the top left corner. The default view that you will see will be empty required. And empty required means that all of the fields that are required by the system that have not yet been populated will display in this view. Now you can look at other views by going to specific tabs, or you could click all to view all fields. That brings back every single field that you have access to. It would put all of those fields in this view. So if you ever need to get back to empty required, you can just click empty required again, and it will only bring back those that still have yet to be filled out. So as you're filling out fields, if you click this again, a lot of times it will remove fields that you've completed since the last time you had clicked it. Okay, so now we're going to go in and we're going to actually do a demo. So I didn't get a lot of responses back on the what you struggle most with the new item grid. Looks like a lot of you have not been in it yet. So hopefully as you go through the new item grid, you'll be able to further determine that. And give me 1 second. I have to open up my demo information. Okay. All right, let me get my G10. Okay, everybody should be seeing QA IMA right now. So I clicked the new items under the data catalog menu, and I'm going to enter a shipping marking number because I'm working on I want to work on a specific carton. So I enter that information and I click Get Task List, and I'm only going to see that one specific carton back in my task list. So first thing I want to do, again, click that plus sign, and it will explode out that carton. You can see all the pieces that are going into that carton. Again, if you're missing anything, do not go ahead and process these. Go back and resync until your additional retail marking number is showing up within that carton. If you're still having trouble, reach out to your data sync provider's help desk. Because if it's not syncing over, it's something you need to reach out to your data sync provider about. So this looks good. I have my sizes small through extra large. So I'm going to go ahead and click the select, the box under the select column, and click Create Grid. And here I'm going to select my division, Kids World, and then I'm going to search for my order done. You guys will have a drop-down that you can select from. Since I'm a super user, I have to actually search through this box. But be sure that you do select a DUNS that has ORD. If you select a pay DUNS, the one with PAY, you're going to run into some problems. You're not going to have any flow type options to select. So if there's nothing under flow type for you to select at this point, go back and make sure you did select a DUNS number with ORD for order DUNS. And then you're going to select your category. Now your subcategory you'll see does not have a red asterisk beside it. You can go ahead and select it at this point if you like, or you can select it within your grid. So all of these fields that have the red asterisk has to be the same information for everything that you're putting on that grid. Because remember, you can work up to 50 items on a single grid. However, you can have different subcategories for the same items on a grid if you're working multiple cartons or multiple vendor stock numbers. So that's something that could be helpful to you so that you can process things more quickly. But I'm going to leave subcategory blank for now, and just so you can see it in the grid. And I went ahead and selected my flow type. Now, if you have a flow type that you're supposed to select and it's not available in this dropdown, that's something that you would want to reach out to your merchant about and make sure that you're trying to select the right flow type. There's different information that you should be getting from your merchant. Part of that is the SHC hierarchy, that division, category, and subcategory. If you have multiple order dones, you may also be getting that information from your buyer as well, as far as which order dones you should be using with this order. Flow type is another field that you should be getting from your buying team, especially if you're set up for multiple flow types. Excuse me. So if it's not available here, reach out to your merchant. Let them know that the flow type they're wanting you to select is not available, and double check that that's what they're wanting and that you're using the correct order dones. And if that is what they're wanting you to select and it's not available, then your buying team needs to put in a request to have that flow type added to your order dones. Or you can also contact vendmain, VENDMAIN, at SearsHC.com to get that process going. Once you select all of your information here, you can go ahead and click Apply. So it may take a little bit for your grid to be set up. Typically, the more items you have on your grid, the longer it's going to take to set up and the longer it's going to take to save, especially for that very first save. Once you save it the first time, the subsequent saves tend to be much quicker. So I'm going to walk through each of these fields that are here. Again, this is your empty required view. You can see it's selected here. That's your default. And we're going to walk through every single one of these fields, and we're going to populate them together. Keep in mind, as you do this with your own grid, you may not have all of the fields that I have. You may have a couple extra fields beyond what I have. It depends on your specific setup and the type of product that you're setting up. So if you run into something and you don't know how to answer it, you can always reach out to the help desk at IMAhelp@SearsHC.com. So first we're going to select the pre-priced method. To drop down that information, you can see these two double arrows here to the right. If you click that, it's going to automatically populate it for the fields underneath that. Now for brand, you can just start entering the name of it. And here it pulls up all of the matching brand attributes from what you typed. So we're going to select that, and we're going to select Apply. Now I didn't click Copy Down because you cannot copy down from a carton to an each. You can only copy down from eaches to eaches. However, if you do have multiple cartons in this grid, so let's say here we have this carton and we have 4 eaches. And then let's say there was another carton and 4 eaches. If you copy down from this point, it will copy down to all of the eaches in the grid. So it'll just pass over those cartons and just copy down to all of the eaches in the grid. So you don't even have to do it for each carton. You just have to do it once. So after brand, we see our dimension unit of measure. Most of you should be using standard US, so be sure that you do select that. And again, I'm going to click that double arrow down, and it's going to copy those fields down for me. And then we have depth, width, and height. So I'm going to enter some information on that. Okay. And I'm going to copy those down as well. And I'm going to enter in what I think is my information for my carton. I am putting this not correct just so that we can get an error at the end, and I can come back and show you the error. but we will look more at this whenever we come back and look at the error and how to see the cube sum value as well. So a lot of this information, the depth, width, and height, those can actually be synced over from your data sync provider. This specific item that I'm working, it just wasn't completed on the data sync side, so it didn't sync over, and that's why it's blank. But usually this syncs over from your data sync provider if you do enter that information with them. So then you select your weight unit of measure, and then you enter your weight for your items. So one thing I want to call out with your weight, so a lot of vendors, when they go to fill out the weight for their carton, they just add up what they see here. So here we see that there's 4 eaches, and each one weighs 1 pound. So a lot of vendors will just enter 4 here. But actually, there are 6 eaches in this configuration. So if we go to the Packages tab here at the top left, we can see our member quantity is 6. So we know that there's 6 total. It's a configuration of 1, 2, 2, 1. So that means that carton weight, if we scroll over to the right, that carton weight has to account for all 6 of those eaches in the carton. So that means since each of these weigh 1 pound and there's 6 of them, then your carton weight has to be 6. So if you get back to your empty required fields, again, you just click empty required. There you can see it removed a lot of the fields that I had already completed, and so we're looking at kind of a refresh of the empty required fields. Next you have your perishable indicator. This is clothing, it's not food, so I'm going to put no. And then you have your country of origin. Now you just start typing the country and it'll bring it up in the drop-down and you can click add. Now you may have more than one country of origin. So let's say you have a drill and part of your drill is made in China and part of it's made in India. You can enter all applicable countries for the country of origin, and then just click drop down, one second, and click drop down, and it'll copy that information down to all of your eaches. Now, a quick word about country of origin. If you do enter the U.S. as the country of origin, please be sure that that is correct. There are a lot of customers that only want to buy products that's made 100% in the U.S. So if that's not correct, it could create some customer trust issues. So just make sure that you are being honest and truthful in your country of origin information. Next up, you have your HTS code. So we usually talk about this during the day 1 session. But HTS code, some of you may know what it is, some of you may not. But basically, when the truck comes and picks up your product from your warehouse and goes to take it to one of our DCs or to the store, if that truck was to get, let's say, stopped by the police, they may be asked to produce a list of all items that they are carrying in their truck. And the HTS code that you select at this point is what populates that list. So it may be difficult to find an exact match for what you're looking for, but just try to find the closest match that you can. So instead of going through this really long list, you can search for within that list. So I'm going to type in shirt and click search. And now I'm only getting search results that have shirt in it. So I'm just going to click this first one and then click add, and then copy down. Next we have fabric metal content. So this may not be applicable depending on the type of product that you are setting up, but for clothing you always have to have the fabric metal content. So I'm going to select cotton and then add, and then I'm going to also select cotton jersey and add. Now you do have to add in a percentage, and that percentage has to add up to 100%. Oops. So just make sure that this does add up to 100%. If it's only one, let's say it's 100% cotton, then you would just put 100% underneath the percentage column. And then you can click copy down. And then moving on over to the right, we have some hazardous questions. If you hover over the heading, it's going to make the it's going to explode out that question for you so you can read all of the details. So this is asking, does this product or accompanying accessory contain any of the following? I'm going to go ahead and click no because this is apparel. But make sure that you do answer this information correct. If you do not know the answer, please reach out to someone at your own company to find out how you should be answering these questions. I say that because we've had products set up incorrectly, and this would happen like a year or two ago. And some propane gas for camping ended up being put on a flight for shipping. And it actually caused a fire on the flight. And they were able to contain it and put it out and everything was okay, but that could have been much worse. And there were a lot of fines involved with that as well. So that's why it's really important that that information is filled out correctly. It was not filled out correctly for that specific item. So the next item is asking product contain polyvinyl chloride, or PVC. So I'm going to select no and copy that down. And the next one asks if the packaging contains PVC. So again, I'm going to select no and copy that down. Again, be sure that you are selecting the correct information for these fields. Next, you have your hazard storage code. This is going to be not hazardous because it is apparel, but here you can see some of your other options. You have aerosols, flammable liquids, motor oils and cooking oils, full chemicals, baby product contaminants. Two of the ones I want to point out to you, number 7 is pet foods, and then number 8 is food products. And it's important to select these if you are setting up pet food or food products, because we need to know if it's a food product, it's going to have an expiration date on it. Also, it cannot be stored next to certain types of hazardous chemicals. The same thing with pet foods. So those wouldn't be able to be stored, I think, next to like bleach or other types of supplies like that. So that is important. This is also answered correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and click 0, not hazardous, and copy that information down. And next we have our cost. So here I'm going to enter my cost of, let's say it's $4.99. And I'm going to do the same exact thing for member cost and copy that down. Now what's convenient about that, when you copy down the member cost, it automatically populates the carton cost for you. So instead of calculating that yourself, you can go ahead and just type in the same cost that's showing up under member cost for the carton. Next we have our primary store format. So we're going to select Kmart. You may select Sears, or if you're working with another store format, you might select that. Again, you can click the double arrows to copy down for your eaches. Next we have our shipping points. So the ship point is where we are coming to pick up your product. And you may have multiple ship points available here. Just be sure that you select the correct one, because if you don't select the correct ship point, we may be coming to your warehouse in Pennsylvania to pick up product that we were supposed to be picking up in New Jersey. So make sure that you do put the correct ship point here. There are some vendors like to use multiple ship points. Let's say you have a warehouse in Pennsylvania and you have a warehouse in California. It wouldn't make sense for us to pick up from your Pennsylvania warehouse to store at our DCs in California. So in that instance, you could set up multiple ship points for the different DCs. You cannot do that at this point in the new item setup. That's something that you have to do after your item is operational, and I will be going over that on Thursday for day 4, the maintenance session, and I'll show you how to set up different ship points for different DCs. Otherwise, you have to go ahead and at least select one of them at this point, and it'll be applied to all of the DCs for that product. Next, you have your vendor applied EAS tag. So if you have a security tag that you put on your product, this is where you would need to indicate that. You'll notice there's this field is found again at the end of the grid, and that's because in IMA it's found on both the vendor pack tab and the item tab. and they should just match and correlate accordingly. Next, you have your projected first in-store date. This is when you anticipate your product to be available in our stores. Usually, you may get this information from your merchant, but if not, you can just select what you think it is, and the merchant can always update it. It's not, it doesn't affect anything. It's more for informational purposes and to help additional rows with prioritizing on getting it set up. So you don't have to spend too much time trying to find out this date if you're not sure what the exact date is. So after that, we have California Prop 65 questions. So most of you are probably aware that California has some stricter regulations as far as what's being sold in state, and they have something called a California Prop 65 warning that's required on some items. So this is where you would answer the questions on whether or not it requires a warning. If you do not know the answers to this, please reach out to someone at your own company to find out about your product. So I'm going to select the first option, does not contain any California Prop 65 chemicals. The second question, again, if you hover over these headings, it will let you view the question in full as well as the answers. So the second question is asking if there's a warning label on the package. So again, I'm going to select no and drop that down. All right, so here we have our subcategory. So you could have selected this on that grid setup screen, or you can select it here. If you have multiple cartons that you're working on and they're found under different subcategories, you can select subcategories for those different cartons. And finally, your last question, if you remember I said this would be found at the end of your grid again, the EAS tag required indicator. Just make sure that your responses do match up. And real quick, if you did complete the SHC subcategory on that grid setup screen and you decide you wanted to change that, it's not going to show up in your empty required fields if you completed that on the grid setup screen. You would have to go find that, and that would be located on your item tab, which you can click item up here. And this is where it would be, where you can update it. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. I should have clicked save sooner, but I just forgot. And it takes a little bit of time to save, especially that very first save that you do. And then after I click save, I'm going to go ahead and click approve. Okay, I just realized that I've been on mute. I do apologize for that. Let's see. I'm not sure where I went on mute at. I think with the grid history, maybe. So I'm going to keep going through, and then if you have any more questions, you can feel free to ask me that at the end of the call. So with the grid history, again, you can either click the plus sign to view your errors, or you can click View Errors in New Window. And that's an easier way to see what's being displayed. You can see here there's converted cube errors. There's also warnings, which you can ignore warnings. So we're just going to ignore those. Those don't have to be changed. So we have converted cube error. So some of your errors you'll see they show up in your default view and they'll be highlighted in red. The converted cube errors do not. Converted cube errors are depth, width, height, or weight. So those are going to be located on your Packages tab. So this happens a lot. I'm glad this happened so I could show you. So you know you have to scroll left to right to view the different information on your screen. Well, here you can see my scroll bar is missing. And we actually get a lot of emails about this to the help desk. So all you have to do is just scroll down using the scroll bar on the right, and there's my bottom scroll bar again. So if that ever happens, just scroll down, and then you should be able to access the scroll bar so you can go left to right. Okay, so the depth, width, and height, the converted cube error. So I got that because my carton cube does not match up accordingly. So there are 6 items in this carton, and the cube for each individual item is 24. So if we take 24 times 6, then that means that the minimum cube value for my carton has to be 144. If it is less than 144, you will get an error. It can be more. There's a pretty big allowance for the converted cube error. So you just have to make sure that those match up accordingly. But that's why I got this error. It does not match up. So I'm going to change my carton and closer to what it should be. And there I have a cube right now of 192. Should be 194. So that should work. I'm going to go ahead and click Approve. And then that should process through correctly now. So key points to remember when you're going through and working your grid. Double check that all items have synced over for the carton before working the items through a grid. Your buyer should be providing key information for item setup, such as your DUNS, flow, store format, SHC hierarchy or div cat and subcat, required carton types if you're doing an exploding assortment or a mixed carton or an assorted carton, and your agreed upon costs. If they did not provide this information and you do not know what these should be, reach out to your buying team. If you reach out to the help desk, we can tell you how to set things up, but we can't tell you how they should be set up for your specific items. That information needs to come from your buying team. Also, double check that the carton dimensions and weights are correct, and save your grid frequently to avoid your grid timing out and losing your information. So do you have any other questions about your new item grid setup, or do you have any questions from the day 1 video? Please feel free to go ahead and to ask me them now. If you think of them later, you can always email vendoruniversity@searshc.com. So I'm just going to leave the phones open, and feel free to ask me any questions that you may have. Okay, if you don't have any questions, that's fine. You can go ahead and sign off, and we will continue this tomorrow. If you do have questions, I'll hang on the line for at least another 5 minutes or so until everyone's signed off. Otherwise, have a great day.